Hey everyone, it's Derek. Welcome back to the Board Game Spotlight. Today we're looking at Gorus Maximus. This is a game from Inside Up Games, and it's for 2 to 8 players, and it's illustrated by the highly talented Quanchi Moria, who has illustrated games such as Dual Powers, Dinosaur Island, and most recently Overlight. So let's take this to the table, and I'm going to tell you about it. So here we have the 5 preferred schools, or the 5 suits inside of Gorus Maximus. Now the game is a trick-taking game, and it can be played with 2 to 8 players. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to determine the number of players, and then you're going to take a number of these suits, and then you're going to play with those. So if we were playing a 4-player game, we would play with 4 of these schools. And you'll see here, this card shows you the 5 schools within the game. So in a 4-player game, you're also going to cut out a number of cards from each deck. So you're going to play with the 0 and then 4 through 12 in a 4-player game. So at this time, we'll go ahead and remove all of those cards from the decks, and then we'll go ahead and show you how the game plays and what a round would look like. All right, welcome back. Let's take a look at how Gorus Maximus plays. Now, unlike your typical trick-taking game, where you would reveal a card from the top of a deck to determine the trump suit, in Gorus Maximus, the preferred school, which is the fancy way of saying trump suit, is actually determined by the first player. So in this instance, if we were to lead with this 6, this would determine the trump suit for the round. And we would use this tracker to show the current preferred school. Now this is important, and there's a reason why we use this tracker, because the trump suit can actually change mid-game. Like mid-round, mid-play, it can change. And let's take a look at how that could happen. If this player had the exact same number, in this instance they do, they could play this 6 on top of mine, and the trump suit would change. Therefore, they now have trumped this trick, and they would win it if no one else can play on top of it to take it from me. So strategically speaking, playing cards from your hand and knowing what numbers are at the table is really important, because you can, again, change that trump suit mid-game, and it can really keep players on their toes. Additionally, we have cards like this 8, which is going to award crowd favor. This is actually -4 crowd favor. So what does that mean? At the end of a round, when all players have finished winning their bouts, which are tricks in this instance, so when tricks are finished, players then add up the number of points they have in their hand. So if we were to win these tricks, we would take all of these symbols, and this is the crowd favor, and we would add all of these up. Now, if we were unfortunate enough to win 2 of these -4s, that would be quite unfortunate. But each player is going to look at their hand, and then they're going to determine how many of these crowd favor points they have accumulated. So we have here 7. But then we have -8, so we would have -1 point. So we likely would not win the crowd support token for this round. But when all players have finished playing the cards from their hand and winning tricks, and when the round is over, when you've played all the cards from your hand, you'll then tally up all of these crowd support icons, and then the player who has the most is going to win that round. What they'll do is they'll take 1 crowd support token, and that's going to show everybody that, hey, they've won 1 round, and you're going to continue to do this until a player wins 3 of these crowd support tokens. Now, we looked at these -4s, so these -4s are pretty dangerous, and a number of the cards have ranges from 2 to 1. There are cards that don't award any crowd support or crowd favor, and they're just going to help you win tricks. There is a catch, though, as well with these 0s. Now, these 0s are really interesting. Number 1, they are a trump, or they are a preferred school, so if you were to play it down, it could win a trick. It's also going to potentially give you crowd favor points. Now, this 0 and 5 means that if we had won this card and we owned it at the end of the round, and if the current preferred school, or the trump suit, was the sword, this card would be worth 5 points as opposed to 0. So there's only going to be one of these that scores 5 in a round, but there are 0s for each of the trump suits. And remember, in a 4-player game, you would play with 4 suits, and so there are 4 out there. And because you can match up the numbers to change the suits, this can become extremely tactical with when you play your card and trying to snipe points out of players' hands. So Gorus Maximus plays over a series of rounds determined when a player reaches 3 of these crowd support tokens. And when you finish a round, you're going to gather the cards back up, you'll deal them back out, and you're going to continue to play. Gorus Maximus plays very quickly, 30 to 60 minutes depending on the player count. Again, it plays 2 to 8 players, and if this looks like a game that is interesting to you, take a look at the description below for a link to the Kickstarter page. This has been Derek with the Board Game Spotlight, and this has been your preview of Gorus Maximus.